Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today our guest is Greg Reese. Thanks for being on the show, Greg.
Thanks, Whitney. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm thankful to have you on the show. And Greg is the founder, president, and CEO of AmeriEstate Legal Plan Incorporated and Reef Point LLC, both based out of Costa Mesa, California. Am I saying that correct?
Costa Mesa.
Costa Mesa, yes. Where he focuses on estate planning and asset protection planning, which became an emerging need for his clients. He has more than 25 years of experience in estate planning, combined with his prior experience of 15 years in the real estate and financial services industry. As a DST trustee, and we're going to learn what that is in a minute, Greg brings a unique multidisciplinary approach to helping owners analyze their exit strategies while considering their tax, estate, and investment objectives and options. Greg, thanks again for being on the show. In case the listeners have never heard of you, tell them, a little about yourself and what your focus is. And then I want us to get into this thing, called the Deferred Sales Trust or DST.
All right. Thanks, Whitney. Well, my background was I started out as a realtor, and it was sort of a family business where my father was a broker. My mother was involved in the business, and my sister and I both ended up getting involved in the real estate business. And I worked primarily in residential and some commercial investment arena. And, partly that ended up becoming securities and insurance license, and was operating as a financial advisor with the real estate practice as well, which is sort of unusual in the investment advisor arena. But I was involved deeply in that for about 15 years and got involved with and learning about estate planning and succession planning and how that applied to my clients' needs as a function of what services I was offering. And I just kind of became really fascinated with it. And I'm just a student of knowledge. I love to learn, and it just fascinated me, and I became enthralled with it. And I got to the point where I was so busy, I was either going to have to start hiring additional salespeople and other advisors to work in my practice, or I was going to go in a different direction. And I ended up working, I was still a financial advisor part-time as a what amounted to a senior paralegal role with a high volume estate planning legal practice, and learned the back office side of estate planning, what goes into it, the consultations, the documents, the laws, and everything about that. And then I was fascinated with that. And that's when I was younger, and I could work, 70 hours a week like you do when you're in your 30s and so forth. But it really evolved into, how can we develop a better way to deliver these important services to clients who are generally underserved in this area, and make it affordable and still provide high quality, and do it over a larger geographic area. So I created a legal plan specializing in estate and asset protection planning, and rolled that out. And we're currently in 6 different states, including Virginia and Maryland, which is close to where you are. And we've been operating for over 20 years. We have 20,000 or over 40,000 clients now that we've helped in those areas. And we're just growing and growing. We're adding new states, we're adding attorneys, we're adding, people that want to be able to offer these services to their own clients, as well as people that just come to us for referrals. So and then I became involved as a trustee for the Deferred Sales Trust, which we'll get into here, which is a really interesting companion niche to what I've been doing for the last 20 years, because our focus has always been on helping individuals and families protect what's important to them. Whether it be protecting their legacy, protecting their assets, protecting their children's future. What about clients protecting themselves from onerous taxation? And that's sort of where the Deferred Sales Trust comes into place. And so I've been involved with the Deferred Sales Trust for about 3 years now, and It's a strategy that's been around for about 22 years, but it's not that well known yet because it's proprietary in nature. There's only 13 trustees nationwide that have been approved to act as an independent trustee for the Deferred Sales Trust, because I think they're looking for certain types of individuals with certain level of experience and so forth. So I was fortunate enough to be asked and lucky enough to pass all of the background checks and vetting that had to go on as part of that process. And, here we are today. I've worked with, numerous clients, tens of millions of dollars in completed closed transactions personally, and just really helping enrich the lives of people who found a different way to either retire or reposition into another asset or save them from a tax scenario that they were hoping they wouldn't have to face, and we were able to provide a lifeline or a safety net for them. So I hope that's good. That's sort of the big picture background, I guess.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you and I were talking a while back on the phone. We were talking about the Deferred Sales Trust, and I was like, well, I'd never heard of it before. So I just know the listeners are the same way, and so I'd love for us to go into that a little bit, and you just explain what that is, and maybe then we'll get into some benefits of a Deferred Sales Trust, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So what the Deferred Sales Trust is at its core is it's really a specialized form of an installment sale, which is a way for people to defer capital gains. Installment sales have been around for 90 years. They're governed and regulated under Internal Revenue Code Section 453, used tens of thousands of times a year. A lot of people think in terms of seller carryback when they sell a piece of property and carry the paper or carry some of the purchase price for the buyer. Small and medium-sized businesses almost always have some installment component whereby instead of receiving the entire lump sum of the sale up front, which would usually mean you've got to pay all the taxes up front too, they will defer some of those proceeds to a later time. So the core of what an installment sale does is it allows you to tax engineer or manage the payment of the taxes that you might owe over a longer period of time. The resulting benefit is that you can generate personal income on money you otherwise would have paid in taxes, or you can take the sales proceeds from the sale of that asset and redeploy them back into another capital asset, like starting or buying or building a business or investing back into investment real estate of some sort, all while using the tax-deferred proceeds of the prior sale and without having to adhere to the rigorous, narrow rules associated with 1031 exchanges. So there's a mouthful for you, right?
Yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. Like, comparing that to a 1031, I know that's what people are thinking of, or listeners thinking of, and benefits, pros, cons to doing a DST compared to the 1031.
So yeah, great question. So, the DST, first and foremost, as an installment sale, we think in terms of seller carryback, just to set the stage a little bit. In a traditional installment sale between a seller and a buyer, the buyer always has the leverage at the end of the transaction because, there's not much the seller can do but hope to get their checks and their payments. The buyer could walk away, causing foreclosure. The buyer could come back and try to renegotiate something that's to their advantage and not yours. They could go and refinance out from under you, and unexpectedly you're realizing a lump sum and paying taxes, and you weren't planning for that. So one of the benefits of the DST is to remove all of those disadvantages that a seller would have in that type of a transaction and return that control back to the hands of the seller. So having sort of set the stage for that, the differences between a deferred sales trust and a 1031 exchange are that the deferred sales trust allows you to sell an asset and reposition, on a tax deferred basis in exchange for an installment note, but to be able to reallocate or reposition the sales proceeds into assets other than, but also including more real estate. So if we know about 1031 exchanges, we know that in order to have a complete tax deferred exchange, you have to exchange for like real property. So if you sell real estate, you can only reinvest in real estate. If a DST is involved on the tax deferral side, you could reinvest the proceeds in real estate. You could reinvest the proceeds in diversified marketable securities. You could rediversify into a business. So there are a number of things you could do. You're not limited, such as the 1031 exchange. That's one. The problem sometimes with 1031 exchanges are the narrow windows of being able to identify a piece of property. So the Deferred Sales Trust has three basic, horizon opportunities to look at. One is a pure exit strategy. I've built a business, I want to sell it. I'm going to pay a lot of taxes at the time. I want to reinvest to generate income that I was getting while I ran the business. Now I want the passive income coming my way. So the Deferred Sales Trust is perfect for an exit strategy. Same thing with a real estate investor owner. They may be tired of the midnight calls for the water heater breaking or just dealing with all of the issues surrounding property management. It may be time to exit and, enjoy life a little bit more. They could use a, DST to exit out of that. It could also be used as a 1031 alternative or a 1031 exchange rescue. So I'll take the rescue first. 1031s don't always succeed. You have 45 days to identify your replacement property and a total of 6 months to close on an identified property in order to complete successfully your exchange. But nationwide, 20 to 30% of exchanges either outright fail or they fail to fully defer the capital gains from the sale of the first property. And that can be problematic for folks. Another problem is that since you only have 45 days to identify your replacement property, you're going to buy into the same market you sold out of. But what do we all want to do as investors? We'd love to sell high and buy low, right? You can never do that in a 1031 exchange. It's almost impossible because markets don't change in a 45-day window. So what if you wanted to reposition back into investment real estate and you're getting out of one and you want to get back in, but you think the market's about to correct or it's on its way down and you think there's going to be better opportunities 9 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, what have you. You essentially could use the Deferred Sales Trust, or we'll use the acronym DST, to park the money, invest it in more liquid, financial investments until you find the right opportunity, not just the one that's available in 45 days, and then redeploy into that next investment that you're looking at. So from an alternative standpoint, that's one of the key features. From the rescue standpoint, it's like, I don't have a lot of leverage when I go into my exchange because once I make an offer, the seller kind of has me over a barrel because now I've got to close on that or I'm going to pay a boatload of taxes. So, for example, and I was in real estate, obviously, as I said, for years, and I dealt with this all the time. What if we discover something about the property we got an accepted offer on and we want to go back to the table and renegotiate some things? We didn't realize that there were some problems or some damage or, some compliance issues. We want to renegotiate some of those issues with the seller. But the seller's looking at me saying, son, you've got 2 months left to close this transaction. And if you don't, and you can't close on any other transaction because we're already here. We're past the 45-day mark. So you're either buying my property or you're paying tax. So I'm not that interested in giving back, too much to you. So it's a leverage problem, right? So those are some of the key, high-level advantages of using this.
Nice. Does it work for any amount of gain? Is there any kind of minimum transaction amount?
Yeah, perfect question. So, because the DST involves, a legal fee and it involves, some costs associated with doing this, which we can cover, we have found that a seller that's facing a taxable gain, which could be capital gain or capital gain plus depreciation recapture of about $250,000 or more would be a very good candidate to take a look at the DST. I'm not talking about paying $250 in taxes, although that would be outstanding, as far as using this as an alternative. But if you're going to pay tax, put another way, if you're going to be paying tax of $80,000 or more on an outright sale, then the DST is worth a look.
Hey there, Brandon Hall here, CEO of the Real Estate CPA. If you're like many active syndicators, you're probably getting taxed hard on the earnings you make as a general partner, specifically related to acquisition fees and asset management fees. You see, these earnings are subject to self-employment taxes, resulting in a 15.3% tax on top of the marginal taxes that you already pay. That's a lot of tax. There's no need to pay more tax than necessary, so join us at one of our free virtual workshops to learn how to structure your syndication business in order to minimize your exposure to self-employment taxes. This offer is only available to listeners of the Real Estate Syndication Show. Seats are limited. Sign up today by visiting www.therealestatecpa.com/syndication.
Nice. So any kind of legal things that we should know about if we're going to try to look into something like this, or myths, or anything like that we should be thinking about?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in that there are some professional advisors out there, sometimes CPAs, sometimes other attorneys that are introduced to this through their client, and they haven't heard of it. And so sometimes the approach is, if I haven't heard of it, it just must not exist. But that's ego talking most of the time. But the fact of the matter is, they don't know about it all the time yet, even though it's growing in awareness and understanding by geometric proportions today. But it's because it's a proprietary strategy. The strategy was developed by a fellow named Todd Campbell, who's a CPA and a tax attorney based out of the Midwest, out of Kansas, actually. And he started putting this strategy together 22 years ago, and has successfully completed, his firm has successfully completed over 3,000 transactions, totaling hundreds of millions of dollars. Every one of them has performed beautifully. They've had 14 separate field audits over that period of time, every one of them resulting in a no change letter, which is the gold standard of what you're looking for. After that series of audits, the IRS invited them to come in for a 4-day long chat, which anybody that's been through that, you can imagine how fun those are. But the IRS did a deep dive, and they did not have to change any element of what they were doing in this strategy as a result of that audit. And then in addition to that, there's been numerous national and prestigious tax law firms and CPA firms, as well as hundreds of other CPAs, middle and smaller size firms that have taken deep dives and looks at the DST. We can also provide CVs and information on some of the more prestigious firms around the country that have actually reviewed this comprehensively to make sure that it's suitable for their own clients who might need tax deferral into their planning structure.
Nice.
So legal, proven, and tested is kind of what we talk about, and we back it up.
Great. And what about fees, that are involved for the seller, or any kind of typical fees we should know about?
Sure. This is a subject that, I find a lot of people don't like to talk about. They like to say, well, call me and we'll talk about it. It's like, but there shouldn't be any mystery, because whether I'm your trustee or whether you're coming in through a different trustee or an advisor who has access to provide, the Deferred Sales Trust with you, there's really 3 sets of fees that are involved in the DST. The one is the legal fee, and the legal fee is usually it's always a one-time fee, and it's always a conditional fee based on an engagement with the law firm that will do all the legal work, create the structure for the client. But if the client does not complete their transaction and use the DST for their tax deferral needs, there will be no fee. There is no upfront fee, and that will not be charged or obligated to the client unless they actually use it. So the attorneys typically charge 1.5% of the first $1 million in a given sales transaction. If the transaction is higher than $1 million, the legal fee is 1.25% of that excess. It's a one-time fee, And what I particularly like about this, having worked with attorneys for 20 plus years, is they actually stand behind what they do more than most attorneys that I have seen and worked with. They will provide audit defense protection for the life of the trust, the seller's trust, at no additional cost, which is a huge thing. Because as you may know, or any of your audience out there has ever been through it, audits are not cheap. So a lot of money involved if you get that letter or that call from the IRS. Second fee is a trustee fee. Third fee is the investment advisory fee. So the core professionals involved in managing a given DST transaction are going to be one of the tax attorneys from Campbell Law. It's going to be an independent approved trustee such as myself, and there's going to be a vetted, trained, experienced independent investment advisor who has gone through the process of becoming approved to manage funds that might be contained within a given DST trust. So the trustee fee is typically going to be 50 basis points, which is 0.5% annually of the assets that are actually in the trust. Investment advisor fee is typically going to be 0.5%, 0.5% to 1% of the assets that they're actually actively managing. If the client wanted to redeploy into other real estate, for example, there's still a trustee fee involved, but there's no investment advisory fee because the client effectively is the advisor for those assets that are invested in his real estate project, for example, or in his business that he starts or buys. So what we like to compare this to is a one-time legal fee and of around 1.25% to 1.5%. Offset that against 35 to 45% is what you would pay in taxes on the gains that you're facing. So that's a pretty low price, a very good deal, I think. And then the trustee fee and the advisory fees are typically designed so that the portfolio of investments that are made are going to be covered by the performance so that the client still gets the stipulated rate of return that they have, requested, within a narrow frame of negotiation, trying to figure out what that proper rate should be. But the fees that go along with managing all this typically are covered pretty well by the investments.
And before we started recording, you and I were just briefly talking about it. You mentioned the benefit of partners being able to split up the benefit. Could you elaborate on that a little bit just so the listeners could hear that as well?
Yeah, sure. No, that's a great question. So, we deal a lot, probably the two most, viable assets that we deal with are investment real estate of any stripe and businesses, any form of entity. And, if you were thinking about a business, for example, it's more common, you could have partners or other shareholders that are involved. Real estate, you can have partnerships, syndications, limited partnerships, LLCs. You could have people, working together towards that common good. And when it's time to exit that business, there are individual and sometimes different needs of each member. So the DST is a great vehicle when the investor partners want to kind of go their own direction. Somebody has, a large taxable event, on a gain on the sale, and they want to avail themselves of using the DST. Another partner, maybe it's a real estate business, they may have the opportunity to continue to do a 1031 exchange if that's what they want, while their other partner wants to, go about doing a DST and deferring their sales proceeds, where a third partner in the business might just say, you know what, I'm just going to pay my taxes and move on. I don't want to do anything else. So it's very effective at helping to break apart the partnership interests so that each individual can pursue the best goal and path for themselves.
That's interesting how you can do that. And before we move on to a few more questions, is there a way you can tell the listeners how they can learn more about that, the Deferred Sales Trust specifically?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, probably the best way you can learn about it is go to my website. It is reefpointusa.com. Reef as in Great Barrier Reef, so REEF as in Frank, pointusa.com. I've got a number of blogs on the topic that I've written there. There's, reach out and request some additional information. There's a ton of ways to get involved. If you're interested in having a specific transaction looked at and an illustration provided to see what are the benefits of selling with or without the DST, then go to that website, just put in the contact me box information, just like, I'm interested in an illustration on my particular transaction. Can you direct me to the website so I can, get my illustration? And we'll be happy to do that. That's probably the easiest way.
Great. And Greg, is there some way that you've recently improved your business that we could all apply to ours?
Well, within the last couple of years, I hired a personal assistant after 20 years of not having a personal assistant. And that was a game changer for me because my day is so busy. I've got a lot of demands to speak, in person or on webinars, or I'm fortunate enough to be invited here and there to speak on a program such as yours. So having somebody help me to stay organized is extremely valuable and important. I think, my staff here, I've actually got 30 staff members that are here in my office, 6 of which are virtual employees. I think, for business owners out there that might be listening, I think that taking a look at having virtual employees, people that are not housed within your office space, can be very attractive and very valuable. We seem to be running out of space in my particular office here. We've got 6,000 square feet, and we're starting to run out of space for new people. But we're finding ways to connect people in with technology so they can work remotely and still be as effective 100% as they are if they're working right here. So those are a couple things I would offer.
No, I like that a lot. I've used lots of virtual assistants for many things, and I encourage it also to anybody. You mentioned ways to work and connect remotely. Is there some type of system or anything you can recommend, the ways that you all communicate or connect and work remotely with someone like that?
Well, there's lots of ways with the technology today. How we do it is we connect everybody to the same database. So you could have a cloud-based database system, or you could have an internal-based system and still allow people to connect. Our phone system is a cloud-based phone system, which operates on the internet as opposed to the traditional telephone line. And so we can have people anywhere who are immediately accessible to take calls from the outside, from clients. They're able to make calls. Hit the intercom and connect with people inside the office. We use internal chat messaging systems, so we can always connect that way. And of course, you've got email and pick up the phone, but those are just extremely valuable. We have people printing documents on, employee in Virginia or one in Nevada, is printing out documents that some other team member needs here, and it's just great.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's fun.
What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
Helping enough people get what they need and want. Because if you're able to do that successfully, then you don't have to worry about what you need and want. And it's all about having integrity and being authentic, I think, and showing genuine care and concern for what you do and the people you serve. Because, next to your employees who are your most valuable asset, your clients are gold, and you've got to treat them extremely well. But it starts with your employees, I'll tell you that much, because if you don't treat your employees like gold, your clients won't be treated like gold. So again, another tip for you business owners out there, just remember what's important. And that's my 2 cents.
Great advice. And before we have to go, tell us how you like to give back.
Well, we do a number of things here. I think we just had an event recently with kids around the world. That was a big event where we were all packaging up food for distribution to kids in areas, whether it be Haiti or even parts of the United States. And, so we got a food truck or a taco truck to come and feed everybody. And we involved other people that happened to be in our building and other companies. So we got together on that. We've, my home office is in California, even though we have offices in Virginia and Maryland, in different states. And we had a lot of wildfires this year. People that lost their homes and really a lot of devastation, especially in Northern California. And we have a lot of clients up there. So, we contributed to the Red Cross, we contributed to emergency efforts, and we also contributed to helping clients who had our documents, like clients with our estate planning documents was burned or destroyed in a fire. We made sure that we got the word out that if there's anybody that had anything happen, we would replace it for free. They just needed to reach out to us. We have everything saved and backed up so we can provide that service for our clients. But if they wanted to make changes and updates, we offered to do that for free because they had lost everything else. They didn't need to worry about this. So there's just a couple examples of things we've done lately.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time and being on the show and just your expertise and explaining what a deferred sales trust is. It's so valuable to our listeners, and any way else that they should be able to contact you or anything like that.
Sure. I can also give out our toll-free number, and that would be another way to reach out to me. That number is 866-867-8633. And just leave a message. Tell us how you heard about us and how we can connect back with you. And we'll do so and try to figure out what we can do to help.
That's great. We'll be sure to have that in the show notes and in the web address you gave out earlier as well. And I appreciate your time, Greg. Appreciate the listeners being with us today and every day. I hope you'll also go to LifeBridge Capital and connect with me, and go to the Facebook group and join the Real Estate Syndication Show. And then if you'll do me a favor and share the show, I would be grateful. And we will talk to each of you tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Whitney.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by LifeBridge Capital. LifeBridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. LifeBridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.